guys, it's Carolyn, and welcome back to the podcast. Today, our guest is Victor Sturgis. He's a CPA and a co-founder of First Rule. Victor is a forward-thinking CPA and one of the co-founders of First Rule, where he channels his passion for technology into developing and helping companies implement AI-driven solutions that simplify contract management for the construction industry. With over a decade of public accounting, including a tenure as partner at Crowe LLP, Victor spent much of his career at the intersection of innovation, people, and the construction industry. Welcome to the podcast, Victor.
Yeah, thank you, Carolyn. Happy to be here.
So before we dive in, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are now.
Yeah, the short version or the long version? Well, you said a little bit in my bio. I started my career at Crowe, so my background as an accountant, as a CPA, and the tax side of the house, actually. So when I got into my career at Crowe, at a firm that size, you typically kind of get your choice of what industry that you want to work in, and I ended up choosing construction. Because of that choice, we actually did a lot of work with contractors around helping them calculate their long-term contract tax implications, right? And that's a much more engaged process than many people think. They're already tracking that stuff from a financial standpoint for their WIP schedules, and now we're talking about you need to have essentially a different WIP schedule for tax purposes. And so we helped our clients with that, and those are giant calculations, giant spreadsheets. I mean, you're talking about probably all the way to column BA, right? If you go all the way to the right in an Excel spreadsheet. Yeah, right. And then hundreds of rows of jobs, right? And we would be doing this massive calculation for our clients. And probably 3 years into my career doing that and mastering that, we decided to create a piece of software that helped our clients do that. Right. And so that was my jump into the construction technology space. And so I eventually became the product owner of that product. So I would not only be in the market selling that product, but I would also be helping clients implement. And so these are contractors, some of the biggest GCs in the country, to subcontractors, and really, really getting an understanding of from a back office functionality standpoint, the fun and joy of implementing new software at construction sites, right?
Yes.
And in general, I don't think it's an issue that's specific to construction, but it's just like people taking on new technology at times. It's really difficult, especially when you've been using the same tools or using the same processes for 15, 20, 30 years, right? It makes it really difficult. So that was my step into the construction tech space. During that time, we had a lot of conversations with those contractors, and the tax implications actually required us to ask questions about what was in the contracts and the subcontract agreements that those contractors had. And you would be shocked. Like even some of the biggest GCs in the world that have teams of 10, 15, 20 in-house counsel couldn't give a straight answer as to how often does this term show up in your subcontract agreements, like a pay if paid or pay when paid, right? How often is that showing up in your subcontract agreements? And they would say, well, we don't really have a way to track that, right? We negotiate them as they come in, but we're not really tracking that. And at that time, my old firm was developing a piece of machine learning. It was early machine learning. So this is early wave AI, pre-gen AI. And we thought that would be a really good use case to have to train a model to read a construction document and be able to extract the information around how often across all of these documents a term shows up, right? And so from that was around 2018, 2019. So fast forward probably, 4 or 5 years to Gen AI. Gen AI comes out. We spent a lot of time training this model. And it's kind of like a, oh crap moment, because now this new technology has come out. Luckily, we were able to take a lot of that learning and a lot of the brain that we created and put that on top of essentially large language models, right? To make it even smarter. The analogy that I typically like to use is an LLM out of the box does a pretty good job. It's like a student that graduated law school, as an example, right? They understand the terms, they can give you feedback, they can read it, but then the fine tuning and the training we put on top of that becomes that 30 years of experience in the industry, know the nuances, know the ins and outs. And I know you've done an interview with Elliot Wagenheim, who works with us. That's our brain, right? He helped fine tune our model. He's great, very, very intelligent guy, very fun guy. So he helped train our model to do that. So coming out of Crow, then we actually ended up purchasing the intellectual property of that software from Crow, and we created First Rule Contract Manager. So I spent a lot of time in the construction tech space and really being like, let's get our hands dirty with contractors and understanding how we can implement new software. Now, a lot of that time is spent more in the back office as opposed to boots on the ground. Our product now does a little bit of both. So I'd love to talk more about kind of that change management element today.
Yeah. So why don't you tell me a little bit more about First Rule and what your role is there?
Yeah. So my role is I lead strategic partnerships for First Rule. Part of my role here, as we've been kind of ramping up, has been helping stand up our customer success and customer support, right? We do have a director of customer success, but I've been kind of helping her in that and setting up the structure and setting up our change management program along with that, which we can talk about a little bit today. And that's based on the experience that I had in the space. But for strategic partnerships, right now I'm focusing mainly on the technology partnerships and technology integrations. The industry, I think, as most of us who have been in the industry for a while know, is going through kind of a technology revolution, if you will, and it has been for a little while, right? But you've got all these separate systems that people have put in place at different times over the years. Some of those systems are still 20 years old. Some of those systems are brand new. And as an industry, we've been trying to figure out how to get all of those disparate systems to talk to one another.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's almost table stakes, right? It's if you're coming to the table in this industry, the product that you're bringing needs to be able to talk and integrate with all of the different products that exist out there, whether that's your CRM, whether that's an ERP, whether that's a project management tool. If there's from your product in any of those spaces, your clients or your prospects are going to ask that question, hey, does it integrate with this? Does it integrate with the tool that we use here? And so my role is to kind of build First Rules integrations out, right? And the way that I want to approach that really is making sure we understand the true use case, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think with the years of experience kind of serving the industry that we have, and between myself and my co-CEOs and a couple of folks who also came from Crow, I mean, we're pushing a 90 plus years of serving the industry. So we have a really good kind of base knowledge of how things work. Mm-hmm. We're also not doing the work from a contractor standpoint every day. And so anything that we do, any integration that I build, I'm always looking for either a client or a prospect or other folks who are really excited about technology and solving problems and saying, here are all the pieces that we have out there. How do we put this together to truly make this work for you, right? This is the function you perform. This is the process our product can help with. How do we blend these two together so that it truly works and not just works, but then elevates the role that you have so that you can do more and spend less time reviewing contracts at the very
manually that you can't understand anyways.
Right, exactly. Very much so. So that's my function, that's my role. So I help lead the technology integration, both from technical standpoint and then also that human-centered design function.
And you already kind of mentioned that construction industry probably most need the technology most, but has been late to the game. In most instances. How do you get it to stick, especially in a company that's been paper and folders for 20 years?
Yes. Yeah.
How do you get them to switch and how do you get them to stick?
Yeah, it's change management from a technology standpoint. Obviously, the technology is important. It has to work. That's table stakes. It's got to work. It's got to do what you say it's going to do, right? But it really comes down to people. It truly is a heavy emotional process, to be honest. And the way that we like to look at it is we need to understand, and the leaders who are helping, on the client side or on the contractor side, need to understand that there are people that are going to be impacted that need to be both seen and kind of heard as they go through this process, right? And when I say that, a lot of people will hear that and they say, well, if someone's going to automatically reject it because it's AI or because it's a new piece of technology, then we're dead upon arrival. Right? Yeah. But just because you hear them and you see them and they feel seen, that doesn't mean that exactly what they say is going to be the end all be all, right? Mm-hmm. As humans, we have this need to have that social interaction, to have my voice be listened to. And as long as that voice is listened to and seriously taken into consideration, right?
Mhm.
Okay, I hear you. Even asking for what do you think would be best in this situation, right?
Yeah.
Again, that doesn't mean that what they think is best is going to be what happens, but allowing them to be seen. Do you remember? This is early YouTube days. Do you remember the video of, I think it's husband and wife, and they got home from a long day of work, and the husband sits down and he talks about his day, and then the wife starts talking about how her day has been terrible, like she's got all this pressure that's built up in her head, and there's just so much going on. And the husband looks at her and he goes, "There's a nail in your forehead. There's literally a nail sticking out of her forehead." Right? And her response was, "Great, but like I don't know where this pressure is coming from." And the exchange just goes back and forth, and the husband keeps trying to solve the issue. He's trying to say, "Just pull the nail out of your head," right? And from her standpoint, she just wants him to empathize, be attuned to her, to understand that she's feeling the pain, right? And I equate change management to that skit in a lot of ways, where your team members that are involved in this change are going to go through some pain, right? Your role as a leader in change management is not going to be to remove the nail, because then why are you using the software to begin with?
Yeah.
That's not the approach that you want to take. A lot of times those team members want to be seen, heard, listened to, be understood, have that leader be attuned to the fact that this is painful for them, and then help them manage the process from there. So when I say that, you have to have a leader.
Yeah.
You have to have a leader who's kind of the executive sponsor, I'll call them. That's what we call them in that role. Who really helps oversee, helps be the person who is attuned to the pain that the team is feeling in implementing the software, the person who is holding a technology partner accountable to meeting deadlines, to rolling out the technology as far as the roadmap, all those different types of things. And then you need to identify one or multiple process champions, right? One, if you're just talking about one process that you're implementing at the time. For us, we usually take, if it's a contract admin, or if it's an in-house counsel, or if it's the CFO who reviews contracts, if it's really that one person that does a bulk of that work, then that's going to be our process champion. In some cases, that person may also be executive champion because they happen to be well. So you find those roles, and there's multiple process champions when you start to expand, or when your product touches different groups or departments within a company, right?
Mhm.
So as we expand our tool, so our tool starts kind of with that back office function, but it expands over into project management. It expands into pre-construction and sales in some instances, depending on how the client's expecting to use the tool. And so you have to identify those process champions, because when you come in, you really should start with the pilot. You should really start very small. And start to build success, right? There's going to be things, I always call them wrinkles, that you have to iron out, right? There's always going to be wrinkles that come up. There's always going to be things within the existing process compared to what the new process is going to be, and you have to figure out what those differences are. If you're trying to figure out those differences and you've rolled out the product to the entire company already,
Yeah, that's a problem.
That's going to be a problem. That's going to be a problem, because you know that there's going to be those folks who didn't really want to implement the software to begin with, just because they liked the way things were in the past, and then you automatically lost them.
Yeah.
Right?
They're like, this doesn't work. This sucks. We never should have changed.
Exactly. We never should have changed. And then once you start to see that psychological slide, especially if those people have a lot of influence, you start to kind of lose traction with implementing the tool, and it kind of ends up going out the doors. So start small, and then radiate that out. So once you start to see wins, and you can talk about, hey, so-and-so saw a 3 or 4 hour improvement in reviewing this contract, that should be something the executive champion takes to the rest of the company. Hey, we just implemented this tool. They saw this much impact. This has been great. We're going to talk about rolling this out here in the near future, right? So you start to get that swell of excitement around it. There's still going to be speed bumps, right? There's still going to be things that come up, but it's easier to start from, I guess you could call it, that positive equity, that positive spot, than starting from neutral, or for some people starting in a spot where I didn't want to do this in the first place, right?
Negative.
So that's quite a bit, but that's kind of our approach to trying to help technology stick within these spaces.
Well, at the end of the day, as far as we know, AI is not going to go out and build things.
That is true. That is true. It may have been, I don't know, maybe a year ago, 2 years ago, I was driving through my neighborhood, and my neighbor was getting roofing done. And I said, that may be one of the safest jobs in the world, in this world of AI. I don't see AI or robots getting on anyone's roof anytime soon.
Yeah, exactly. So, they definitely need it. So then tell me some of like the wins that those people that actually did implement it felt at the end of it once they got through it.
Yeah. It's a little bit of a breakthrough, if you will. So have you ever seen kind of the change curve before?
Mm.
Have you seen a change curve in any way? So in a change curve, and it's something that a lot of folks have put out there and kind of studied when implementing technology, there's this upswell of excitement. Maybe you saw a demo of the product, right? And you're, oh my gosh, this is going to be amazing. Then you get to the point of we're implementing it, and that curve starts to go down because it's like, oh my God, okay, this is difficult. This isn't lining up exactly with my current processes. And then you get to what they call the trough of despair, right?
Yes.
Very bottom of the curve. Now this is very common across the board, where there's two paths you can take from there, right? There's that exit where it's like, all right, well, this is just not going to work. Or as you continue to push through it and iron out all those wrinkles, you start to climb back up. And what success starts to look like there is once you have a vision, that process champion has a vision of the process working for them. So in our case, I get a contract that comes in the door. I throw it in your product, right? Your AI reads it, and I start to go through either my old kind of checklist or thought process in reviewing that, or I've started to develop kind of a new process that goes along with the product, right? But I'm going to look at these 15, 20, 25 terms because I know those are high risk terms for us. Instead of me having to read the document myself, now I can go in, click a button. It's going to take me to where indemnification lies in this document. And it's not just the paragraph for indemnification. It's contextually where like those elements that feed into indemnification lie in the document as well. So as I'm looking at that, first of all, I didn't have to read the document
To find it.
right? Second, I'm getting some feedback as to, is this more risky for us? Is this less risky for us? How do I actually negotiate this if this terminology that's showing up is too risky for us? And that's where we have something like Elliot. We have some videos with Elliot in there that kind of give you explanations of, well, what does this term mean if you're not used to that term or you need a refresher? Or how should I negotiate this term? Right. And so then you're using AI to help make your job easier. Really, instead of having to turn on your brain, and you said it earlier, for some things that you probably don't really understand in some cases anyways, unless you are a lawyer and you understand those things. But you're finding it easier, you're getting assistance and help easier in navigating whatever that term is or provision is that might need to be negotiated. And then you're able to take that, send that back to the other side of the table and eventually get your way to a spot where you feel comfortable with the risk that you're taking on. Saving you time, training you, which is a really important thing because it's helping like up your knowledge in your game, but then also just making it easier to manage risk for your company. So taking those three things and really breaking them down again to those short-term wins and saying it saved me this much time. We were able to negotiate this much risk to the sub or back to the owner, whatever that might be. And I learned a little bit more how to negotiate this specific term. And now I'm better off for it as a person. Being able to take those as wins and say, okay, I can see how this works for me. I can see how this is going to make this function of my role. In some cases, it is someone's most of their role. In some cases, like a CFO, it's a very small portion of their role that they're doing at nighttime, reading a contract while they're sitting in bed, right? And that's not fun for anyone. So now if I can get that off my plate, then that's a big win and a big breakthrough. And so going back to the change curve, you start to see how it actually helps your process. And then you start to get even more excited about implementing that software. And so I used our product as the example, but that would be the case for really any product. Like the person needs to see and feel the impact to their day-to-day job, whether that's time, whether that's managing risk, and actually feel like this actually works. And especially when it comes to AI, I think that's one of the big hurdles that people have. If you're not using it in your daily life, like, oh my gosh, this actually is quite amazing.
Yeah.
It could do a really good job at X, Y, or Z.
Hmm.
Understand some of the guardrails and the guidelines and some of the limitations that it has. But once you get a feel for that, you're kind of off to the races. So I think that's big for change management as well.
So tell me about some integrations and how your product works with other products that you've been working on.
Yeah, absolutely. So our first that we are most excited about is our Procore integration. So this is feeding a little bit more into the project management side of the house, right? Where you have team members, you have boots on the ground, you have folks who honestly it's probably in most cases the worst part of their job to deal with paperwork,
Yes.
right? That's not what they're there to do. That's not the highest and best use of them as resources at your company. But when a question comes up as it relates anything related to a contract, right? Whether that's a subcontract agreement, it's a change order, markup on a change order, all those different elements that require someone in the field to bring out their tablet, to bring out their laptop and find a contract document,
Yeah.
that's painful. That's painful for them, right? And so, our goal is to try and help bring Martin, and I haven't really brought up Martin. Martin is the name of our AI agent. So he's the guy that you go to ask questions related to your contract. So within Procore, we've built a sidebar functionality that if you're in the software, it pops out. You can pull up what contract that you want to ask a question about and literally just type in plain language. Hey, what does a contract say about this, that, or the other? Right? You're going to get a plain, simple answer. It's not going to go through, give you the entire text, give you the entire paragraph that it comes from, but Martin will give you a plain answer that you can say, okay, great. Now I can actually fill out this notice delay. And I know that I have 10 days to submit it. I know who I have to submit it to. I know what information needs to be in this notice delay. And Martin can actually, in that case, help you generate an actual template that you can copy and paste into your company letterhead, send it on its way, copy and paste that into communications within Procore, and send that through the communications within Procore as well. So
Very cool.
really excited about that integration. And then, of course, Elliot, I'll bring him back up again. We are finding ways not just to make it easier for project managers, superintendents in the field to ask these questions, but again, there's this education piece that goes with it. So you have folks getting promoted to project manager. And it's really funny. I was actually just at Procore Groundbreak last week, 2 weeks ago. Again, I don't know what date it is. And I was in line at the closing night bath next to a young lady who worked at a contractor. I think she worked more on the admin side, but her husband had just got promoted to project manager. And she shared with me that was the worst part of his job. It's like all of a sudden I have to read contracts. All of a sudden, I have to be involved in, the front end of getting these deals done with subcontractors. But then also, as I'm managing the project, like I need to know what's in these things. And I'm not a lawyer. I don't understand a lot of these terms. We know a lot of those contracts are written in terms that aren't easy to understand. And so the training piece comes in because it's not just you can ask Martin, which a lot of people probably do anyways, but I can watch a video on what this term actually means. And it's like 2-3 minute videos, not much longer than, the scrolling that we did.
Yeah, really.
You can sit through it, right? You can sit through it. And it's Elliot too, so it's pretty entertaining. So we brought that into the Procore integration as well. And then on top of that, just a quick summary. So what is important for project managers to know on this specific project? What's different than our norm? I mean, we have a lot of clients who work. Their clients, they've been working with 3 years, right? They have 3 or 4 big clients that they work with, and that's pretty much 80%, 90% of their book of business. But sometimes if they have like an MSA in place and this is a work order and there's something different for whatever reason about this work order and the terms within the work order than their norm, they want to know that, right?
Yeah.
What we hear is the question that a lot of folks in the back office get asked, the people who actually negotiated the contract document to begin with. They get people in the field calling them and saying, hey, what should I know about this? What's different about this contract than our norm? And so being able to use our AI to generate that contract summary document is what we call it, and pushing that into Procore and having that available for field teams. So just pop that up, read through it. I mean, we have 3 or 4 pages and it's a nice table and it shows everything that they should be aware of. It just helps them manage the project effectively, ask less questions, which just takes up more time, right? I mean, if they're taking more time, having to ask questions, wait for answers, read a contract document, that means they're not executing the project, right? And that's what we all want.
Does it go through scope documents too?
So right now we're not at scope documents. So I'll give a shout out to Document Crunch. Document Crunch is one of our competitors, and they just rolled out their scope documents.
I haven't heard much in a while.
We're moving in that direction. So they've picked that up, and that's going to be extremely helpful once we get there. And I think that Document Crunch users are probably enjoying that.
Yeah. That's exciting. So if people want to find out more about First Rule or you, where should they go?
Yeah, check us out on LinkedIn. It's under First Rule. We have our fun little puzzle piece logo if you ever see that. So check us out on LinkedIn. You can go to firstrulecm.ai. That's our website. And we have a couple of different easy ways to get engaged. You can watch some community demos that we have coming up, or you can actually just hop in and try out our apprentice tier. It's pretty cheap, about $800 a month, and you can try that out pretty easily and upload your contract documents there. See how you like it.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show.
Thanks, Carolyn. Absolutely enjoyed it. Appreciate you.